harder. We're continuing it. Yes, hello. Can I help you? Say hi. He's here too. This is Zatara, by the way. This is the boy. This is the babo. This is the bean. The little creature. My son, I gave birth to him myself. Don't know if it's obvious. He takes after his mommy. So I guess he's going to be joining us until he decides to not join us anymore. Okay. There he goes. Or, yes? No? He's thinking. Okay, Zatara has left the chat. Okay, we start the thing now. We do the guy, we do the stuff, we do the hi, hello, how are you, friend? I think you were invited here by Delane, I think, right? Maybe. Anyway, hi. Yes, hi! It you! It my friend, and Jim. Hi! Hello. Let's see, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Let me... He's coming back. He's coming back. Okay. He says, hello. Hi. I had a feeling that they might go to bed, but this will be on YouTube later for anyone that wants to see it that can't make it this evening. So let's get to it, shall we? I don't know anything about this story other than the fact that it's by Robert Westall, which was a British guy who was British until 1993 when he... Excuse you. Pressing buttons. He was around till 1993, which is the year I was born. Coincidence? Yes, entirely. We're reading The Last Day of Miss Dorinda Molyneux. I don't know what it's about, so let's find out. Let's... Life's ironical, but sometimes nice ironical. I like that word. Take the time I was struggling with all my might and main to overtake Clocky Watson in the antique trade. Clocky Watson, by the way, is a recurring character because this is all the same. This is all the same. He's an antique dealer who's telling all these stories, and it's just... It reminds me of this song by Captain Bog and Salty. Yeah, right? It's called Emphatical Piratical, and it's great. Captain Bog and Salty, Emphatical Piratical. You should probably listen to it at some point. Not right now. Maybe later. Life's ironical, but sometimes nice ironical. Take the time I was struggling with all my might and main to overtake Clocky Watson in the antique trade. As you know, I failed. What I never noticed in the middle of my exertions was that I was becoming a very solid, prosperous citizen in the eyes of my fellow citizens. Not, that is, until people began having a quiet word with me, putting in a quiet word for me, ringing me up and conducting rambling, ambiguous, awkward conversations that always ended up with me being invited to join something. Like a cult? Maybe? Invited to join a cult? The Freemasons, I refuse! It's not a cult, but, you know, it's close. The Freemasons, I refused. If I have one belief, it's that I must make my own way by my own bloody efforts, and my sense of humor would never let me appear in a funny little apron. Me neither. It's absolutely a cult. It's 100%. They wear hats! They wear hats, okay? You can't wear me... Wait... You can't get me to wear a hat unless it's this one. which would not stay in my head right now because I'm wearing a hair stick. It's a hair stick, but it's a pencil. Who am I fooling? No one. The invitation to be a magistrate I put off for years. In my game, the line between crook and honest John is drawn in some very funny places, as it is in most games, if truth be known. And I would not play the hypocrite, but I joined Rotary without a qualm. I joined Rotary without a qualm, though I never did much apart from eat, drink, and gossip. My starring moments always came in their annual sale of second-hand goods in aid of the hospital radio. Hospital? Okay, so I'm thinking of like a Frasier situation where it's a radio show from the hospital. That's probably not right, but it still confuses me. Or is it like a ham radio? And there's like a radio in the surgery, so you get to hear the surgeons be like, "Clamp! No, not there! He's losing a lot of blood! Oh my god! I should have never dropped out of lawyer school!" Lawyer school? That's not what it's called. My starring moment always came in their annual sale of secondhand goods in aid of hospital radio. I think at first they hoped I'd find a long-lost Rembrandt, but in the end they put me in charge of the old lawnmowers in the rain outside. It always seemed to be raining. If I got the odd sideboard as a bargain, or a set of good Victorian chairs, I always paid more than the price they'd put on them in their ignorance. Of course, they reckoned they were making my fortune. But the invitation I liked best was to be a school manager at Barton Road Primary. I was still unmarried at 34, though not from lack of whining and dining young women. Same. And having despaired of ever having children, the chance to acquire 300 at one blow was too great a temptation. The third meeting I attended was to appoint a new teacher. I found... It's true. They do not transfer. I am suing this liver for gross negligence. That's a thing. You can't sue the liver out of the body. You can't. I've tried. The third meeting I attended was to appoint a new teacher. I found it amusingly boring at first. My fellow managers were not a brilliant lot, being mainly the weaker hangers-on of the local political parties. Each seemed to have a set question which he asked every candidate in turn with an air of profound wisdom. We interviewed 3 worthy female mice in tweed skirts and jumpers, and the only difference I could make between them was that one was rather tall, one rather fat, and one amazingly minute. You calling women fat on my live stream? Punk ass. Don't call people fat. Unless they're okay with it. But still don't. It's rude. The fourth candidate was Miss Dorinda Molyneux. How dare! How dare! How dare! The fourth candidate was Miss Dorinda Molyneux. That caused a stir, I can tell you. The Molyneux were a county family living 5 miles away at Burrborough Hall. At Burrborough Hall. There were 5 daughters, born one a year over 20... I read that so wrong. Born one a year over 20 years before, while their mother was getting breeding over with so that she could return with undivided interest to riding horses, all duty done. 20 children? And she didn't even die. 20. One child a year. That's like a cat. But cats don't live that long. Girl, how are you not dead? How'd your pussy just not fall out your body? Fuck. Anyway. The girls had a name for being spirited. One had run off to South Africa with a Count Clichy. Yeah, that's right. You have to like stock up on your babies because some of them are gonna be duds in the. Wait a minute. This guy, okay, so from a previous story, we know that he was in the Second World War. He was like maybe in his 20s, like he hadn't met his wife yet, in the 40s. It was only like 1910. So I guess, I don't know. I don't know. Like my grandma's aunt, somebody in my family before my mom and before my grandma decided to have 11 children. So I guess it's not unheard of in that timeline. Getting off topic. Sometimes they expire. Okay. Like jars of mayonnaise. One had run off to South Africa with a Count Clichy, who had once tried to run our local country club. Another went far left, emigrated to America, and got involved in the Berkeley campus troubles. I looked forward with interest to what eccentricity the eldest Miss Dorinda, or rather, to be correct, Miss Molyneux, should display. Miss Molyneux's eccentricity was doing good to the children of the underprivileged workers. For I must explain that although Burr, is a pretty half-timbered little town, it has its black spots, and most of them are centered around Barton Road. She came in, closed the door behind her decisively, and shook hands firmly with our Madam Chairman, without giving her the option to shake hands or not. She then shook hands with the rest of us with that raised eyebrow of privilege that requires introductions. She followed up the introductions with questions as to our occupations and well-being, and her general thoughts on life. She was definitely interviewing us. In all, it must have taken up nearly a quarter of an hour, and we had allowed 20 minutes for each candidate. Then she sat down, crossed her legs, and gave us, with a smile, her undivided attention. The first thing I noticed was how remarkably fine those young legs were. You are interviewing this person? Quit looking. Keep your eye bones in your eye face. God. Miss Molyneux was a very fine young woman indeed. Long, glossy hair below her shoulders, expensively cut to look casual. The pearls would be real. And old. A tan not acquired in English weather. A big girl, though not fat. And eyes as bold as blue as those of the first Baron Molyneux who had crossed with the Conqueror and stolen his bit of England. I'm still mad that you say fat. Eye bones in your eye face. Eye bones in your eye face. Close them. Put on sunglasses or something. I don't know. It's rude. It's rude. It's probably the 50s. It's not unheard of, but it's still rude. Still rude. They asked her their usual questions. Did she believe in corporal punishment? Yes. She put her head on one side, crinkling up her face in schoolgirl thought. I know it was a different time, but they still... It was a different time. And yet, I'm still mad. I'm not against it. Not really against it, but I believe in training by kindness. I had a horse once. Oh God, she's a horse girl! She kindly explained her theory of animal welfare to Counselor Bierskoff. B-Y-E-R, scoff. Who was not half as senile as he looked. Oh, you're just mean to people. Okay. So it's just a mean thing, not a sexist thing. That's not better. And a near communist to boot. Oh. I see. I sat back, waiting for her to lose one vote or another after another. Pity, she was by far the brightest person we'd seen that afternoon. But it wasn't as simple as that. I am trying to get it 18 plus, but I cannot find the setting because like I said um I have specific words like blocked, and like if you use them you will be banned. They're bad words. But like this stream, the chat automatically blocks the F word or the horror word, which, like, you know, it's not bad to be a whore. Whores are a very good thing. They're good for the economy. So I have to figure, I have to figure out how to be like, yes, you can swear. You are allowed to swear. It's something you can do because we're all grown-ups. Get creative with your swears, actually. Like, get jiggy with it. Get funky with it. I want to see like a little, what's it called? Creative writing. I want to see little. That's nice. That'd be fun. But it wasn't as simple as that. I wasn't allowing for the weight of prejudice. There were 4 left-wingers who wouldn't have voted for her if she'd talked like Ernest Bevin and sung like Caruso. There was the headmistress, who sat with a look of spreading outrage on her face. Oh. But there were also 5 Tories. Shopkeepers, mainly, though they called themselves independents. Oh, God. Who were not only almost touching their forelocks to Miss Molyneux, but... What the fuck is a forelock? Is it like your forehead? Whatever. This book it's a British author, so I don't know. And both sides would have voted, who were not only almost touching their forelocks to Miss Molyneux, but asking to be remembered kindly to her father. Oh, God. And both sides would have voted to spite the other if the candidate had been the Queen herself. But then there was me. I'd sat quiet as Miss Molyneux had swept out with a final gracious smile round the table, and hostilities had commenced. I'd sat quiet as old battles were refought and old wounds like the dinner lady's Christmas present reopened. What happened at the dinner lady's Christmas? And in the end, deadlocked, they turned to me. Which class, I asked gravely, might she be destined for? Up a year, bottom stream, said the headmistress. It's British. Should I give them a British accent? I do a decent Dame Maggie Smith, said the headmistress, her eyes remote and frosty, sensing a traitor in her camp. Do it? All right. Oh, this problem. They need an experienced teacher who will keep them in hand, not someone fresh from training college like... She stopped herself just in time. I can't upset the whole school system in mid-year by moving my staff about. Why did I vote for Dorinda Molyneux? Because you wanted to fuck her. That's the answer. That's why you voted her. You wanted to fuck her. To begin with, I fancied her. Ha! I was right! I was right. Then I had slightly cruel curiosity about what she and 4C would do. Yes! That's... Yes. Thank you. Then I had a slightly cruel curiosity about what she and 4C would do to each other. But above all, I thought Barton Road needed a good shake-up. I longed to set a cat among the mice. He wanted to fuck around and find out. I'm using this phrase now. I wanted to set a cat among the mice. Fuck around and find out. So she got the job and thanked us graciously, and I earned the headmistress's undying hatred. School managers don't have a lot of say in the daily running of the school, but Dorinda's arrival was so spectacular that stories kept reaching me third hand. The class horror, there's one in every class, moved in on her quickly. By the end of the second morning, during an altercation concerning a broken ruler, he called her a silly tot. Now, Dorinda might be opposed to corporal punishment, not corporeal. Not corporeal, that's when you get punished by a ghost. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that? Not me. I don't want that. You're weird. Now, Dorinda might be opposed to corporal punishment, but the Molyneux did not get where they were today by knowing how to cope with English peasants. And the vigor with which Molly Molyneux could hurl a lacrosse ball still lived as a legend in the head halls of Redan. The class horror... Y'all, this boy's name, he is the class horror. His name is Henry Winterbottom. Come on now. Come on now. Henry Winterbottom is not the victim of that. I guess it's a fairly regular English name, but English last names just sound fake, okay? They just sound fake as shit. And this... Winterbottom. The class horror, Henry Springass, by name, was... Harry Winterbottom. As opposed to the spring bottoms, who are smooth ass. Smooth as a peach. Peaches are fuzzy. Whatever. The class horror, Henry Springass, by name, was backhanded across the ear so hard he teetered on his toes 5 yards before he hit the painting cupboard, which was rather insecurely fixed to the wall. Then he fell down, and the cupboard fell on top of him. I'm sorry. It's not funny. It's hilarious. The noise was heard as far off as the caretaker's house. The head rushed in and extricated Henry from the wreckage. Miss Molyneux's teaching career looked doomed to an early death, but blows were the coin of affection in the winter... Oh, that's sad. It's called The Last Day of Mr. and Molyneux. Now, this says ghost stories on it. This does not say slice of life. This does not say deep thoughts. Because first of all, last day of Dorinda Molyneux, I'm guessing she loses her job. Second, but blows were the coin of affection in the Winterbottom family. The only coin in an emotionally bankrupt household. The ghosts are the physical abuse we caught along the way. Oh God. This is a whole different kind of spooky scary. This is a different kind of spooky story. Because it's real. I mean, ghosts are real, obviously. But like... scary. And besides, much think, many brain... lot of thought. Wow. And besides, the disaster had been so widespread as to bring renown on Harry's head also. Henry, not Harry, and Jim, I blame you for that. I'm calling him Harry now. I'm calling him Harry Bottom. Both he and Miss Molyneux would linger in legend, so he uttered the gallant words, "I just opened the cupboard door and it fell on me, miss." The head, sensing she was being robbed of her great opportunity, swiveled her eyes around the class, looking for a dissenting verdict. But the class was too firmly under Harry's thumb, and Miss Molyneux's violence was much too treasured a possession. Not a lip moved. You know how to push my buttons, though. Like, you have concocted, you've like done some kind of alchemy, like it's wordsmithing, but it's word sorcery, and you learned my secrets of how to fuck with my brain. I don't know what you did, but I'm kind of into it. Yeah. But Harry Springass, became from that day on as faithful to Miss Molyneux as any of her family dogs. Ooh. Same brain. Yeah. We've got a mental connection, you and I. We've got that telepatheticness. I'm telepathetic. I don't know about you. I'm just telepathetic. And that was the way it went. Miss Molyneux was used to being firm on dogs and horses, and 4C became her foxhounds. Harry Summertop. Yes. Harry Summertop. There's a bear in the woods joke there somewhere. I can't find it. I tried. From 4C's point of view, she was the greatest of treasures, a genuine eccentric. Where the earnest little mice would have nagged 4C about bad handwriting or not handing in their homework in time, death to any child's soul. Miss Molyneux gave detailed instructions on how to groom a horse, generously brandish a currycomb in huge strokes that carved an invisible horse out of the air. Witchcraft. Then there was those thrilling moments of silence after Henry asked such questions as, Have you ever drunk champagne, miss? Which were rewarded not only by the news that Bollinger 48 was the best champagne to buy, but that Miss Molyneux had actually consumed a whole Jeroboam with a feller in a... British. A whole Jeroboam with a feller in a punt on the river at Cambridge, and the incredibly aristocratic hour of 4 a.m. The head tried a few sneaky tricks. Classes had to be marched in crocodile to the playing field a mile away for... What? It was said that many such journeys had turned the deputy headmaster's hair gray. But Miss Molyneux had a good eye and a vigorous disposition. She not only took over the girls' hockey team... Did she? Joined in the boys' soccer in her flaring blue tracksuit, laying out the school captain with a magnificent foul. Soon the whole school was eating out of her hand, and to 4C she was a goddess. Several parents complained about requests for ponies at Christmas. Oh dear. It was at about that time that I came back upon the scene. Oh, this guy. Yeah, she's vigorous and coaches girls' hockey and boys' soccer. You want to have lunch sometime, Mr. Enda, or... You're probably dead now. This was 1950. Anyway. No, she might just be old. I don't know. I can't do math. It was about that time that I came back upon the scene. Again. She nailed me at the autumn fair. Held in aid of a school minibus. Voracious is another word. Voracious clam eater. Their minds need broadening, she said. No good teaching history without showing them. I hear you know about old things. So I turned up one afternoon with the least breakable items from my shop, smart. And as we've learnt to say now, she counted them all out and she counted them all back, heavily thumb-printed. And Harry Springbottom, Harry Summertop, got the silver salt cellar back out of Jack Hargreaves' trousers pocket before I'd ever missed it. Harry gave Jack a well-aimed kidney punch by way of retribution, saying, You can't nick off him. He's Mrs. Feller, ain't he? Miss, who also overheard this infant dialogue, had the grace to blush, and I suddenly felt I had a chance. We ought to take them around a stately home, I said, ever the good citizen. How nice, she said, with the kind of smile you give the Spanish charge d'affaires. Charge d'affaires. But we'd better spy out the land first, I added, so you can make up a project. Do you know Tattersome Hall? No, I don't know Tattersome, she said, suddenly sharp. Who lives there now? I felt I was moving into a different league. A lot of butterflies. Oh, that silkworm lot, she said ungraciously. They bought out Betty Toddersome after he got the DTs, you silly old sod. Ooh. The headmistress passed, giving us a look that would cheerfully have crucified us both. Oh. You free Saturday afternoon? Said Dorinda. She was never one to wait to be asked. I brought up the Burr Hall prompt on 2. Dorinda was in the formal garden with 2 rather disreputable Pekingese called Marco and Polo. Of course they were. She was either teaching them to pull up weeds or instructing the flowers how to grow. Something was certainly getting it in the neck. Marco peed on my best cavalry twill slacks by way of greeting. Not used to animals, then? Asked Dorinda brutally. It's a sign of affection. He's mocking you out as his property. It's not. It's a sign of dominance. But you know stuff about dogs, of course. Obviously, Polo felt hurt by Marco's preemptive strike on my garments. He walked up casually and buried his teeth into the tatty fur around Marco's neck. Together they rolled into some rather depressed laurels, making a sound like feeding time at the zoo. They're great friends, said Dorinda. She looked at my Chrysler station wagon parked on the rather thin and rutted gravel. Is it foreign? It's illegitimate, I said gravely. Its mother was a Rolls, but they left her out one night and I'm not saying that word. They left her out one night and she was attacked by a rather common single-decker bus. I'm not saying that word. Yeah, wouldn't they know? Wouldn't they know? God, certain skeleton boy can put his teeth in my neck. Thank you very much. I suppose it will get us there. And your best Sheraton commode, 6 Chippendale dining chairs, and all your family portraits. Oh yes, you're a dealer, aren't you? Not a propitious start, and the group got steadily worse. We walked into the entrance hall at Tattersam, which is lined with dead and glorious foreign butterflies in celluloid boxes. Aw, I thought they was alive. That's disappointment. Sad. Yuck, said Dorinda. Oh, wow. Some people will pay up to £400 for. Jesus Christ, said Dorinda. A noise of disgust so explosive it would have made Earl Harold flee the field at Hastings. It turned every head in the room. I thought your lot liked dead animals, I said. Only ones we've shot ourselves. Anyway, if I ever invite you for tea, you won't find a single dead animal in Berber. We are not a lot. We're individual people, and I've never met the Duke of Edinburgh either. I had hoped it might be romantic in what the Tottersome people call the jungle, the old palm house still full of palms and little tinkling power-driven waterfalls. But now alive with huge tropical butterflies that will actually settle on your hand. Oh, there are live ones. Just, you have to mix the dead with the living. Obviously. What kind of party is... That's not a dead man's party if you don't mix the dead with the living. And actually, they're all dead at the dead man's party. Everybody's coming, leave your body at the door. Oh. Anyway. Bloody hot in here. Worse than a Turkish bath, said Dorinda. A blue swallowtail from Malaya settled on her shoulder. Tatty-looking thing. Oh, how rude, she observed. Falling to pieces. Should be put out of its misery. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like. Don't be a cunt. Then she dragged me from room to room, questioning everyone she could lay her hands on about the process of silk farming. I left her sad for a moment. It was a mistake. I heard her hoot. You mean you have to kill the poor things to get the silk? Kill them by boiling them alive? Monstrous. Should be abolished. I'd rather wear nylon knickers now I know. Same, actually. I refuse to use silk. Ever. I got her away from the blushing curator with... Oh, ha! I got her away from the blushing curator with, as the RAF used to say, maximum boost. Not bringing the kids here, she announced as we tumbled down the front steps. Nothing but a bloody abattoir. What's that? She stopped abruptly so that I banged into her, which was not unpleasant. Keep it in your pants. That's Tattersam Church. But it's 3 miles from the village. But very close to the hall. The gentry could walk there without even getting wet. The villagers could walk in an hour. Nothing to peasants. The blue frost of her eyes traveled slowly up and down my face. Wasn't where there was a peasants' union, Mr. Ashton, she said at last. and I wasn't aware you'd rather appointed yourself shop steward. I suppose your father was a docker or something, and you're not going to allow me to forget it. I suppose you left school at 12 and worked polishing the gentry's boots for 2 shillings a week and half a day off every fortnight. My father, I said, is a bank manager in Cottiston, and I took a second in history at Durham. More the petty bourgeois union, then. Do you want to see the church? It might have been the sudden frost in the May of our relationship, but I shuddered as we approached that church. It wasn't the sort of church I liked. It might have been medieval once, but it had been badly got at during the Gothic revival, and the worst thing they'd done was to recase the outside in some pale marble-like stone as smooth and nasty as a marshmallow. The years are not kind to that sort of stone. Green algae had gathered in every crevice and ledge and dribbled its pale greenness down the walls. It looked like a hollowed-out tombstone with windows. Actually, I'm kind of into that shit. The door was open, in fact, from the rusted lock and the porch full of dead leaves. Sorry, I read that wrong. I guess nobody ever bothered to close it. The nearest village was 3 miles away, and there was no fear of vandals. All the notices flapping on the notice board were yellow and held on with drawing pins that had deteriorated into blobs of rust. The vicar, the Reverend Ernest Lacey, lived 5 miles away at Teddiston, if it was still the same vicar. We pushed on through the inner door, inside purple and blue windows, in the black darkness. Inside, purple and blue windows, in the black darkness. We stood for a moment, unable to even see our feet. Then the family tombs began to loom towards us out of the darkness. They reared up to the left and right, the whole length of the wall, the flowing of white marble pillars and marble faces lying on gilt cushions. Trophy of shield and sword and trumpet, and pot-bellied exulting cherub with dust piling in his navel. They crowded inwards across the black and white tiled floor, like a crowd at a road accident. Bare white marble arms outflung pleadingly in frozen futile gestures. White marble eyes seeing nothing but seeming to know a great deal. Between them, the space for the living. A few short box pews seemed to cower and shrink. Even if that church was packed, the dead would surely outnumber the living. They usually do. In the family vault under the altar are deposited the remains of John Ansey, Esquire, second son of the late Christopher Ansey, Esquire, and one of His Majesty's Commissioners for Auditing Public Accounts, who departed this life the 25th of November, 1802. So many wanting to be remembered, and so few coming to remember them. It struck me that the ignored dead might get angry, like tigers in a zoo that have been left hungry for too long. Foreshadowing? Maybe. Oh, that's beautiful, breathed Dorinda. She was staring at a grill that bordered the altar, a thing that the blue window behind reduced to a skeleton, but which on closer inspection still disclosed a lick of gilt. Blech. I went up and fingered it. Did you ask first? Because that's very fine wrought iron work of curiously individual design. It closed off a pointed arch and seemed to my bemused gaze to be almost woven out of odd-shaped, distorted crosses overlapping and weaving through each other. "It is by Tijoux?" whispered Dorinda, all for once. Too late for Tijoux. Tijoux's your 1680s, St. Paul's. This is more your 1760s. Still, a good piece of blacksmithing. Peasant! Ah, but the children could make rubbings of the patterns on it. They could copy out the words on the tombs, draw the cherubs, and Henry would love to draw those spears and shields. And there's a couple of monumental brasses, I bet. I pulled back a faded red carpet, unpleasantly damp to my fingers. Ooh, I can feel that carpet. Oh. That's not the kind of damp carpet I want. To reveal a 6-foot knight and his lady, engraved flat in brass, inlaid in the black and white marble on the floor. Oh, this would make a lovely project. We could have an exhibition in the school hall, but how can we get them here? She turned to me, flushed with enthusiasm, mouth open. I wanted to kiss her, but settled for saying, well, the school's getting the minibus soon. Can you drive it? Of course. And if I bring my illegitimate rolls, I can park 12 in that. Would it be safe? Never lost a grandfather clock yet, and they're worth money. Oh, let's do it, Jeff! One part of me was elated. She'd never called me Jeff before. But the other half of me, the antique dealer, was doubtful. This church felt wrong. I do not say this lightly. Dealers are undertakers of a sort. When a man dies, the undertaker comes for his body, and quite often the dealer comes for the rest. How often I have been left alone to break up the home a man has built up over 50 years and sell the pieces where I can. As I break up the home, I know the man. I have known a cracked teapot yield enough evidence of adultery to satisfy 10 divorce court judges. What? I learned that he was mean from his boots that trapped forever inside the sepia photographs are 7 of his children. From his diary that he believed in God or the devil or Carter's little liver pills. I deal in dead man's clocks, pipes, swords, and velvet breeches. In passing through my hands, they give off joy and loneliness, fear and optimism. I have known more evil in a set of false teeth than in any so-called haunted house in England. And this church felt wrong. I tried to temporize. It's not a good example of the style. I have a friend, a vicar, with the most beautiful church. He's studied it for years. He'll explain everything to the kids. It's got bells they can ring. She set her chin stubbornly. No, I found this. If you won't help me, I'll come on my own. Hire a coach. I disliked the idea of her and the kids being here alone even more. So against my better judgment, I said, okay. Then she said, suddenly more sensitive than I'd known her, you don't like the place, do you, Joff? It feels wrong. We're not going to feel it. We're going to draw it. Do not feel the life models. That's not what our class is about. Still life. And that brave and vulnerable smile came back, like a highwayman putting on his mask. I think, in that moment, I fell in love with her. And knowing that, I still didn't stop the awful thing that happened. What happened? Course, sir, they ain't half a niff down there, said Henry Summertop, sticking his nose through the gilded grill. What is it, the bog? Clot, said Jack Hargreaves. That's the crypt. Dracula's down there. He started chewing avidly at Henry's filthy neck until Henry gave him a punch that sent him rattling against the ironwork. You mean bodies? Henry's eyes glowed with what might have been described as an unearthly light. Bodies all rotting with their eyes falling out and flesh hanging off their bones and skulls. Can we go down and get one out of the coffins, sir? Asked Jack Hargreaves. No, I said firmly. Oh, sir, please, we wouldn't do it no harm. We put it back after. It's unhygienic, shows no respect for the dead, and besides, the grill's locked, I said. Oh, yeah, said Jack Hargreaves rather professionally. Reckon you could pick that lock, Summertop. Try me. But I shooed them on and got them distracted in brass rubbing a knight in armor, to the sound of tearing rubbing paper and cries of stupid bastard and you did that. I prowled on. I couldn't keep still in that place. It wasn't just the cold. I thought I'd come prepared for that, with a quilted anorak and 3 sweaters. No, I kept having, not delusions, not even fears, but odd little anxieties, preoccupations. I had the conviction the walls weren't vertical, or was it the floor that seemed to slope down toward the middle of the nave? Certainly the floor was hollow. No one could walk on that and listen to the echo of his footsteps without realizing that. Then, the windows didn't seem to be letting in as much light as they could. Kept going outside to check if the sky was getting cloudy, but it was still bright and sunny. Thank God. And I went back feeling the better for it. Then, I stared down at the cross in a side chapel. Just looked like 2 bits of wood nailed together. I mean, it was just 2 bits of wood nailed together. But, though I'm not a religious sort, I tend to see any cross as a bit more than 2 bits of wood nailed together. And that smell. or Niff, as Henry would have it. It wasn't strong, but it was everywhere. You never got it out of your nostrils, and the only thing I can liken it to was when I got in a new lavatory bowl at the shop. It had to be left for the sealant to dry overnight, so the builder stuffed wet paper down the hole, but the biting black smell of the sewer filled my shop and dreams all night. For a while, till lunch, the children made things better. There's an atomic bomb of enthusiasm in a lively class of 35 let loose from school for the day. I could almost feel their vitality invading every part of the dark, affronted silence, but little by little, the silence absorbed it. Lunchtime was still happy with the kids asking what the big house was for, but they were curiously reluctant to get back to work afterwards. And then the grumbles started. "Miss, the sellotape won't stick." "So my pencil's broken again." Dorinda was a tower, a fury of strength coursing around the church nonstop. I began to realize just how hard a good primary teacher can work, but the complaints began to overtake even her speed. Soon, in spite of both our efforts, only half the children were working. The rest were standing around in little dispirited groups. Then there was a god-awful scream from the chancel. One of the younger girls screaming on and on. Dorinda ran. I ran. The child was standing tearing at her cheeks with her fingers, eyes shut, and a noise issuing from her open mouth like a demented steam whistle. "It's a spider, miss, behind that man's head." They pointed to the recumbent effigy of the tenth Lord Tattersome, who had a smirk of dying satisfaction on his face. Dying satisfaction? Interesting. And who appeared to have been carved from some singularly pale and nasty cheddar cheese. Ew. "Gone, only a spider." Henry flicked with his hand behind the 10th Lord's ear, and the spider dropped to the floor. We all gaped. It was impressively huge. Henry raised the hobnailed boot. "No, it's just an ordinary spider. Just got rather old and big. A grand spider, maybe." There was a thin and nervous titter. And then I picked up the spider and let it run up my anorak. "Jeez, they're very useful," I said. "If it wasn't for them, the flies of the world would poison us all." I carried the spider out, saying encouragingly to him, "Come on, Eustace." It seemed important just then to dispel fear, discourage killing. When I got back, most of them were working, and the cheerful noise was back. "Thanks," said Dorinda. "You wouldn't make a bad teacher, you know." "Thanks," I said, "but I am a good dealer. Eustace'll fetch £1 for somebody's stuffed spider collection." She looked at us as if she half believed me, then turned away laughing. That was good, too, though I thought there was something a little shaky in her laugh. I went to check my pile of gear by the door. Cameras, gadget bag, but also my first aid kit and 2 big lanterns. I had come prepared for a siege. 2 large thermos flasks of coffee, a box of Mars bars. I hadn't the slightest idea what I was expecting, but nothing good. A memorial on the wall caught my eye. "To the memory of Thomas Dole, an honoured and painful schoolmaster, lay preacher, and benefactor of this parish. He publicly rebuked vice and discreetly practised virtue, and left his entire estate to buy tracts for the poor. His monument was erected by public subscription among his grieving friends and pupils." This is a Roman numeral. I don't know what it is, but MDCCCX, so I'm going to read it like that. "Blessed are they that rest in the Lord." There was the crash of a drawing board, the tinkle of paper clips, and a wail of, "Oh, miss, he's tore it." "Thomas Dorr, where art thou?" I muttered. We could do with some reinforcements. But there was no crack of thunder in response, no rending of the tomb, only echoing cries of, "Henry's took my rubber, sir." I did my utmost. I whizzed up and down with my flash gun and camera, taking pictures of everybody working. Gave out coffee. Coffee? They're children. Coffee? That's not good for their growth. They're gonna stay small. I gave out coffee, then followed up with a round of Mars bars. But more and more in my rounds, I came across a scatter of work abandoned. And more I found children gathered miserably in the shelter of the porch, on any excuse. A stone in the shoe, the need for a loo. Feeling faint, feeling sick, I ferried many across the loos in the house. Their eyes caught the butterflies in the entrance hall. The demands to go to the loo reached epidemic proportions as word of the butterflies got back. One would have thought cholera or dysentery was raging. In the end, I made a bargain with them. They'd go back and finish their work and clear up nicely. I'd fix a quick trip round the butterflies. That's bribery, hissed Dorinda in the live silkworm room. Do you want to put on a good exhibition or not? I hissed back, reaching forward just in time to stop Henry stuffing 3 live silkworms into an empty cigarette packet, though all the display cabinets appeared locked and sealed. I must admit I was glad to see Tattersham's church fading back into the dusk in my rearview mirror as I herded the minibus towards home like an anxious "Hi, welcome back," like an anxious sheepdog. I was just grateful that nothing really bad had happened, even though the minibus ahead seemed full of the fluttering shapes of swallow-tailed butterflies. They tumbled out of the transport happily enough in the schoolyard. In fact, they'd sung the first 2 lines of old pop songs over and over, all the way home, a sure sign of well-being. "Where's he taking you tonight, miss?" inquired Jack Hargraves, loudly. "What do you mean?" bridled Dorinda. "He's taking you to the flicks, ain't he? Your fella. I mean, he's not stingy. They've got Elvis on at the Roxy." "It's a cowboy film, miss. Love Me Tender." "Oh, it's lovely, miss. He gets killed in the end." "Doesn't sound lovely," chorused the girls. "It's dead wet," chorused the boys. "Let me run you home," I said to her tactfully as she was about to explode. When I dropped her, I said, "What about old Elvis, then?" She invited me to a point-to-point at Mearsden on Saturday, and it poured all afternoon. I can't think of a worse punishment than that. There, the whole thing might have died, but it rained all Sunday as well, and I spent the time in my little dark room developing the photographs I'd taken in the church. They'd come out remarkably sharp for a flash, and I blew them up to 10 by 8 to console her. They looked quite nice around the classroom walls. The one thing I couldn't make out was a face that appeared in one, peering round one of the tombs. It wasn't my face, and it certainly wasn't Dorinda's. Far too ugly. And as it had a bald head, it certainly wasn't one of the children. "This is where it gets spooky." It was well back in the harsh shadows thrown by the flash, watching 2 of the girls rubbing a brass-lettered tablet set in the floor. The girls were very intent, or pretending to be very intent, on what they were doing, and were obviously quite unaware of being watched. The face didn't look like a real person somehow. I might have put it down as the face of an effigy from one of the tombs, except that the eyes were dark and alive and watching. It worried at my mind all the time I was printing and developing. Kept on going across to the print where it was hanging up to dry and staring at that face. I think I was trying to reason it out of existence as a trick of the flash on a piece of crumbling stonework, as a projection of my own eye and mind. But it looked, let's face it, hungry and evil. I didn't like the thought that I was making it up to my own imagination. I've always had a down-to-earth, trouble-free imagination. Anyway, I ran down to the school with the photographs on the Wednesday, and the kids were pleased to see me, and so was Dorinda, and so, by miracle, was the headmistress. The kids had been busy, working from what they'd done in the church, and the lively results hung all over the walls. It appeared that as soon as they got back to the classroom, they'd come back to rumbustious life and produce the best stuff I ever seen. So good that an inspector had been summoned. I was introduced to him, a pushing young man who went wild over my photographs and said it was seldom that a school manager took such an interest, and who went on about having the whole exhibition laid out in the foyer at County Hall. I wondered whether he was just angling to get a date with Dorinda, but his enthusiasm seemed genuine enough, and had sent the head into 7th heaven. I pointed out the strange watching head in the photograph. Dorinda insisted it was a trick of the light, but Jack Hargreaves said, "Yes, sir, he was there. An old bloke. Didn't say nothing. Just hung around in the shadows watching the girls. Dirty old sod. I thought he was the caretaker." The headmistress gave Dorinda a funny look, and Dorinda went a bit pale. The inspector changed the subject rather quickly, and went back to his praise of the drawings of the cross-eyed cherubs and the very fine picture of a tomb that Henry was busy on. It had a mournful draped lady on top in the Regency style. and the inscription,
"To the memory of Mary Craig, a woman of exemplary piety and discretion, who was called hence at the early age of 29, yet having in an eminent degree attained that—"
"You'll have to hurry and finish this," said the inspector. "Can't, sir. This is as far as we've copied. We had to rush at the end." "Pity," said the inspector. "Certainly can't be hung up in County Hall in that unfinished state." I saw a look pass from Henry to Jack Hargreaves. I thought it was a look of pure disgust. How wrong I was only to discover later. On Monday morning at the shop, the phone rang, sounding like trouble. It was the head. And even over the phone, I could hear she was tight-lipped and shaking with fury. Sorry, I read ahead.
"You better get down here straight away, Mr. Ashton. I knew this church business would lead to nothing but trouble. I feel I must call a meeting of the managers, but I think you are entitled to be consulted first."
I covered the mile to school in record time. The head was waiting just inside the entrance,
shaking with fury.
I covered the mile in record time. The head was pounced immediately. She was tight-lipped and shaking. She led me to the hall where Dorinda's exhibition had been hung before going to County Hall. She gestured a quivering hand at the big central exhibit. It was Henry and Jack Hargreaves' drawing of the Regency tomb. The draped lady on top still looked like a wilting lettuce leaf, but the inscription had been completed.
"To the memory of Mary Craig, a woman of exemplary piety and discretion, who was called hence at the early age of 29, yet having in an eminent degree attained that maturity which consisteth not in length of days."
Unfortunately, other words had been scrawled over this chase message. Huge words in a wild hand. Words like whore and strumpet and doxy. Oh, dear. "That," said the head,
"is what comes—" "That," said the head, "is what comes of ill-advised expeditions."
She led me to her office. The inspector was there, rather white round the gills of the face of such massive female wrath. And Dorinda, who, if anything, looked rather red in the face and defiant. "Have you faced the lads with this?"
"Certainly not."
"Can I see them?" I asked as calmly as I could. I think it might stop us making fools of ourselves.
"What do you mean, Mr. Ashton?"
"I mean, these are not words commonly found in the 20th century child's vocabulary." The inspector nodded. He was no fool. The head picked up that nod, and Henry was duly summoned. "Henry," I said, "suppose I was to send you out for a strumpet. Where would you go get one?" Henry looked at our assembled faces warily, too old a hand not to smell trouble coming from a mile off. But then a look of genuine bafflement came over his face. "Music shop?" "That's a trumpet, Henry." "Cake shop?" A flicker of grin crossed his face. "That's a crumpet, Henry." "Dunno, sir." His face was utterly still again. "So, Henry, what would you call a woman who took money for going with men?" Henry's face froze in a look of pure horror. Never had such words been uttered in this holy of holies.
"You may answer, Henry,"
said the head without moving her lips at all. A tart, miss, on the game, or a scrubber." The whites were showing all round his eyes. "So if you didn't know what a strumpet was, Henry, why did you write it on your picture of the tomb?" "'Cause it was on the tomb when Jack and I got there, Saturday afternoon, sir. We don't know whether to copy it or not, but we thought it must be official." I beat the inspector to our cars by a full 10 yards.
"Never in my 40 years as a servant of God have I known such a thing," boomed the Reverend Ernest Lacey. "One opens one's church to schools for the benefit of the community as a whole, and this happens. Children today."
"Can you suggest," I said, "how children today could possibly have reached up that high? I mean, is there a ladder available that they could have used?" The young police sergeant whom Lacey had brought with them nodded thoughtfully.
"There is no ladder," said the Reverend Lacey. "They must have brought one with them."
"On their bicycles?"
That's an adult's work, sir, said the sergeant. You can tell by the sweep of the arm in the lettering. He stood up on a pew and stretched up. Big fellow, almost as big as me. That's adults, Reverend. Disgusting. Henry, was that bald man here again when you came? Yeah, said Henry, very chastened. He was hanging about, peeping at us. Didn't say nothing. I thought he might stop us, but he didn't say nothing. He's only really interested in girls. He was a rumman, though. He blushed delightfully and stopped. Why, Henry? Can I whisper, sir? He drew close. Jack Hargreaves reckoned he were only wearing a shirt. A raggy shirt, all dirty. Reckon he was one of them, sir. One of what, Henry? Asked the head in dire tones. An escaped lunatic, miss, said Henry, dissimulating. A nutter. Nutter or not, if it's adults, it's a crime, said the sergeant. Now, if you'll pardon me, Reverend, I'll take evidence, and you can get this place cleaned up. He went to the tomb and began to scrape off some of the black paint of the vile lettering with a knife into a little envelope. I noticed the paint could not have been dry. It came off the white marble too easily. I saw the sergeant wrinkle his nose. We left him and drove back to school, the head emitting sighs all the way. Hoo! Like a dragon cooling down after breathing fire, and Dorinda making subtle little self-righteous noises that seemed to be demanding an apology from her superior. My shop bell rang while I was brewing coffee. Turned out to be the young uniformed sergeant from the church. I offered him a cup. He drifted round my shop looking at things. It's all paid for, Sergeant, I said, half sharply, half a joke. It's all right, sir, he said soothingly. I'm into old things myself. That's a nice Viennese regulator. Trade prices, £20, I see. I raised my eyebrows. 19 to you, Sergeant? Or is that bribing a policeman in the course of his duties? Surprisingly, he laughed, and he got out a checkbook. I'm afraid I'm not the usual level of sort of police sergeant. I've got A-levels. It worries my superintendent. He doesn't think I'm quite human. First he sent me off to Bramshill College to get rid of me. Now he keeps me at headquarters for dealing with the knobs. Anything funny that crops up, like this church business. There have been developments yet? Oh yes, of a sort. We know he's got a key to the church. I gave a grunt of surprise. Vicar got a woman in to clean up, and he locked the church. Thought he had the own key. A week later he went to look around, and the joker had been at it again, and 3 times since in the last fortnight. I've been spending a few sleepless nights at the vestry, but nothing happens while I'm around. And the first time I'm not, it happens again. I don't envy you, I said. It's a nasty building. I don't think I'd spend a night alone there for a superintendent's wages. I wasn't alone, sir, he said with a wry grin. Uncle Bobby was with me. What does he think? Hasn't a clue. He's new. Came last year from Strupping. I'm afraid village bobbies aren't what they were. I'd like you to come and see the place, sir, again, if you will. I'd like your professional opinion. I wasn't one of those kids, you know. Oh, no, it's not kids. As we went, I slipped the pictures I'd taken to church into my pocket. Or rather, one of them. I looked at the interior of the church aghast. Every tomb seemed to be vandalized. William Trenton, vicar of this parish for 40 years, an industrious harbinger of church music. The sweetness of his harmonies charmed the ear, and the mildness of his manners the heart. Died in a year in Roman numerals, and I do not read Roman numerals, I'm sorry. That one carried, scrawled in furious letters, Thief! Extortioner! Give back the tithes you ruined Jack Burton for. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. And on the tomb of the lady of invincible virtue and great condescension, she played the harlot with her own son. Those are 2 different voices. I don't know. I don't fucking know. I walked from one to the other. Nasty, I said, but not brainless. It's almost as if he knew all about them. A mad local historian? It's funny you should say that. I've checked the church records. There was a farmer called John Wilberforce Burton. See, like I said, they all sound fake. All these English names sound... Wilberforce? Wilberforce? Who? Whomst? Weist. Died in 1783. Okay. dispossessed of his land, killed himself, not buried in sacred ground. And the lady he made that comment on, she had a son who never married. She outlived him. The comments are relevant, almost like he'd known them personally. Has everyone copped it? He's left the Victorian ones alone, and the schoolmaster door. Ah, the pillar of virtue, yes. Well, he would, wouldn't he? Funny thing is, Sergeant paused in embarrassment. I had a writing expert in, a graphologist. Superintendent went mad about the expense of getting him over from Muncaster. Got all that kids in that class to scribble stuff down for me. He went over them. That's how I know it wasn't the kids. But he did say one funny thing. Apparently, the writing's very old-fashioned. Seems that every country makes its own kind of mark. He ground to a halt. You mean like the young Georgian gents who carved their names so elegantly on the pews at Newhurst during the long sermons? And I ground to a halt, too. We looked at each other in the gloom of the nave, then shrugged, as men do, and changed the subject. How different Dorinda's story might have been if we hadn't. Ooh. I pulled out my photograph, the one with the bald head, watching the little girl's brass rubbing. I suppose now we'd go on to daft topics. I wasn't afraid to raise the matter. What do you make of that, Sergeant? Oh, it's the famous photograph. I'd meant to ask you about that, only I reckon the lads were making up a tale to get out of trouble. Rum-looking bloke, if it is a bloke, hard to tell. Could be a lump of marble, statue's hand or something. Let's line it up from where I took it. We looked. There was nothing on any of the tombs where the head appeared in my photograph. Could be anything. Maybe one of the kids left a packet of sandwiches on the ledge. Looks crumpled and yet bloated. Bit like a turnip lantern. Could even be the head of another kid. A bald kid. Could be the trick of the flash, making him look bald. If he's real, I wouldn't fancy meeting him up in an alley on a dark night. We both laughed uneasily. Then he said, do you mind if I hang on to this? I'll get some copies made. Somebody in the district might recognize him. Somebody who's been to Madame Tussauds, maybe. We laughed uneasily again. Madame Tussauds is an asylum, by the way. I think. And there we left it. I must say the official opening of our exhibition at County Hall was quite to-do. Quite a-do. Sorry. That was in the days when money was no object. The catering was elegant and the whiskey flowed like water. The exhibition looked great. They'd borrowed my negatives and blown them up to a yard square and very sharp. The kids looked far keener and more industrious than they really had been. But their work was good and beautifully mounted. Good mounting can make a good thing... Good mounting can make a thing look worth $1 million. Mounting. That's why you get charged extra for OnlyFans, because a good mounting is worth $1 million. I would not charge $1 million. I'd have to charge like 10. I'd have to charge like $10. I'm not in demand. That was a weird thought process. Sorry. You must remember that was also in the days before kids were taken out of school a lot. I think the county was trying to encourage project work in the primaries. There were a lot of teachers there that evening, and a lot of inspectors and organizers and advisors, and a lot of counselors who'd mainly come for the whiskey, which they drank at incredible speed, never batting an eyelid. They must have had a lot of practice. Form 4C was there as well, brought by the head from Brr on a coach. Sorry, I had to pop my elbow. With 4 other teachers as reinforcements. The children looked incredibly clean. I didn't recognize them till they spoke. Dorinda, I remember, came straight from home in her white meanie. She looked so happy and excited. There was such a press of people around her, complimenting her, or just touching their forelocks and asking to be remembered by her father. To her father. Sorry. But I remember to this day how happy she looked. Working around the exhibits, I came face to face with my police sergeant, every inch the gent in natty Thornproof. Mike Watkins, as I knew him now, was from his name on the check. How's your Vienna regulator going? Fine, that's about all that is. Not caught your mad local historian, then? Nobody recognised the photograph. I got some damn funny looks. You know, what strikes me is the way it all started after 4C had been to the church.
It wasn't them.
I know it wasn't. But things started happening immediately after, like they disturbed something. Something pretty nasty. Got one new piece of evidence. All the time we'd been moving around the exhibition, now something old and beautiful and shiny caught my dealer's eye. Among all the cross-eyed cherubs and dim brass rubbings, a padlock, thin and elegant, and polished with brasso half out of its life. "Hang on," I said. We went across together. The notice under the padlock, rather wildly written, read, "A medieval lock, on loan from the Tattersome Church from the crypt." I remember what Jack Hargreaves said about Summertop being able to pick the lock. Huh? Yeah, there it is. Dracula, done up by J. Hargreaves and H. Winterbottom. Summertop. H. Summertop. The lock was not medieval. Sorry, I said it wrong. It's medieval, or even medieval. Yeah, Dracula. That's what he said earlier. He was like, "Do you reckon Dracula's in there?" And he could be right. Could be Dracula. Actually, Nosferatu was the bald one. The lock was not medieval, or even medieval. It was elegantly Georgian, with an interlacing pattern of crosses, the lock from the grill of the vault under the altar. An awful premonition gripped me. "What's your nasty piece of evidence?" I asked. He shuffled uncomfortably. "Well, you remember I scraped some of the black paint off that first tomb that was vandalized? Sent it to forensic." "Me neither. Nosferatu is a no-no vampire. There's no-no vampires, there's squad vampires, and then there's the Autistic vampires. And he's underneath the no-no vampires. He is in the crypt underneath the no-no vampires. We don't talk about Nosferatu. He messed with SpongeBob. We don't take that shit lightly." Sorry. "You remember I scraped some of that black paint off that first tomb that was vandalized. I sent it to forensic and they couldn't make head nor tail of it, so they sent it on to the Home Office. Lucky I'd scraped off plenty." "Well?" I asked sharply. "Well, Sir Bernard Spilsbury..." "Spilsbury? Really?" "Sir Bernard Spilsbury got to the bottom of it. Wasn't paint at all. It's the decomposed remains of tissue. Animal or human, they can't really tell, it's so old." "How old?" He gulped. "I reckon centuries old." "Oh my God, the lock, the crypt, somebody knew the owners of the tombs personally. It's crazy, Sergeant. If we say anything, they'll throw us in a nut house." He became very constabulary, the way even the best ones can. "I have evidence, sir, that parties, or parties unknown, have entered the crypt and violated the cadavers, and are using their remains to write graffiti on the tombs, all of which are crimes." So gross! So gross. Just imagine being so nasty. Can't relate. Sorry, I lost my spot. As from another world, the voice broke in on us. From the cozy world of pretty girls handing round drinks and art advisors plotting and counselors knocking back whiskey. "Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of this unique occasion, the chairman of the county council, Councillor Neil Fogarty, will present certificates of merit to each child who took part." It went quite smoothly until the name Hargreaves J. was uttered. No Hargreaves J. came forward. "I'm certain he was on the bus." "I'm certain he was on the bus," said the head tetchily. "Perhaps he's gone to the..." "Carry on," said the head.
They carried on until they came to the name Summertop H. He was not only missing also, but a thorough search of the cloakrooms and corridors had revealed no trace of Hargraves J either. Where are they? Hissed Dorinda, realistically taking the form monitor on one side and shaking the life out of her. Eventually, there were tears, and the appalling admission that the two had slipped away from the bus, having asked to stop for the loo at Tottersham. Oh no! The whole form had got off. Jack and Henry had deliberately not got back on. Others had answered their names on the roll call. Jack and Henry had brought sandwiches and torches. They were going to lie in wait in the church for the bald-headed man who wrote the dirty words. No! No! You are not Ghost Adventures! No! No! Shit! The next second, Dorinda was running for her car, and the sergeant and I were pounding down the corridors of County Half behind her. Ooh. We nearly caught up with her in the car park. She drove off from under our very noses. "We'll take my car," I shouted, which we did, and by putting my foot down on the bypass, I nearly overtook her at Selmerby. But at that point, she took to the little winding lanes that she'd known on horseback since a child, and on those bends the Minnie left my shooting brake standing. "We've lost her, sir," said Sergeant Watkins. "Drop me at the next phone box and I'll summon help straight to the church." But I couldn't bear to stop. One thing that kept ringing through my head, Henry Summertop saying that whatever the thing was, it didn't bother boys. It was the little girls it was interested in. Ew. Oh God, ew. In the end, Sergeant Watkins took the law in his own hands, as he had every right to do, and jumped out as I slowed down at a crossroads. At least he had the courtesy to slam the door, so I didn't even have to stop. But the minutes ticked away. I took a wrong turn and got lost, and still the minutes ticked away. It was half an hour before I pulled up by Tattersam Church. The white Minnie was parked by the porch, no light on the church or in the big house, but in the moonlight the church door gaped wide. Henry's skill with a lock had worked again. I ran through the inner door into pitch darkness. "Dorinda?" There was a kind of mindless animal sob. "Dorinda, for God's sake!" I shouted. Then I heard a slithering noise. Somewhere among the box pews. I was just beginning to see the outline of the windows now, but nothing else. Then Henry's voice came, quavering. "Careful, sir. We're in the corner here. Watch it. He's prowling around." "You better not prowl around me," I shouted, "or I'll break him in half." "Watch it, sir. He's all slippery. Pongy." Sorry. He's got Oh my God. Oh my God. "Watch it, sir. He's all slippery. Pongy. He sort of falls apart when you touch him. Oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh God, the lights. Where were the lights? I realized I'd never known. Oh shit. Where are the lights, Henry?" I was moving towards him, slowly, stealthily, listening for the slivering that was moving between us. Dorinda began to sob again, softly, mindlessly. The lights don't work, sir," quavered Henry. "They must have cut them off." Oh my God. Sorry. My outward groping hand came into contact with something upright, round and hard. I knew what it was. One of the churchwarden's staffs that are set upright at the end of the back pews. I got it loose and felt for the top, a heavy brass bishop's meter. It would make a good club. I felt a little better and moved on. The sound of Dorinda's sobbing, the boy's heavy breathing came nearer. Sorry. So did the slithering. And I could smell him now. The smell that had always been in this church, but 1,000 times stronger. The smell of death. I had smelt it plunging into the bowels of a crashed bomber in the war. Oh God. I could smell him. I could hear him. But I hit him. But I hit him because I felt him. A sudden drop in temperature on the right-hand side of my face as he came at me, as if he drew the warmth out of the surrounding air. I had never struck a blow like it before, and I hoped never to strike one like it again. It would have killed a man, but I could never have brought myself to hit a living man that hard. It had all the fear in me, all the rage, all the hate, and I could tell from the feel of it that the church warden's staff hit him where his neck joined his shoulders. It felt like hitting a rotten marrow with bone splintering inside. Oh, God. And it... Oh, God. Cold drops splashed against my face. But there was no shudder, no gasp of pain or groan. It was hitting a dead thing, and instinctively I gave up hope. It dripped on his face, dog! It dripped on his face! It dripped on his face! It dripped on his face. The next second, the staff was snatched from my hand so fiercely that I lost all use of my fingers. And the second after that, I was flung against the pews with such force that the seat back like a horizontal axe drove all the air from my lungs, and I thought my back was being broken. And I had felt the large hands that flung me, cold as ice, even through my trench coat. I lay on the floor and listened to the slithering go past me towards the corner where Dorinda was. Oh no. I don't know how I got back to my feet, but as I did so, a sound came to me from the sane world outside, the wail of a police car siren. The windows of the church lit up from without with the cold blue light of car headlights, and I saw him, or it. For, sensing the flare of light, it turned, and I saw it across the tops of the box pews. A bald head with blank, black eyes that shone in the light. A broad chest with what might have been a growth of black hair. And round the head and shoulders not a ragged shirt, as Henry said, but the green rags of a shroud. Yeah, right? It's not as good as it was before. Now there was a second police car siren. Old Watkins must have had them homing in by radio from every point of the compass. For a long moment the creature paused, like a badger brought to bay in its own wood. Then it seemed to sense that there would be no end of the lights of the noise, and the men with whom it had little quarrel, men who could ruin it to earth and destroy and demolish and block it off forever. Though the unreadable expression on the bald face never changed, I knew that it despaired. The next second it was limping at great speed across the nave towards the altar. I heard the grill to the vault clang, and it was gone. Seconds later, a torch beam cut across the nave from the porch. There was a fumbling, and all the lights went on. Sergeant Watkins must have known where the master switch was, and then the place was full of flat caps and blue uniforms. "Where?" asked Mike Watkins. I nodded towards the grill that led to the vault. He walked across, took something from his pocket, clicked it into place on the grill. He gave me a certain look, and I nodded. There are some things that are best not entered in policemen's notebooks, if only for the sake of chief constables and the judiciary. "How did you get the lock?" I asked him. "I confiscated it as material evidence," he said ruefully. "But it's better back where it is. I don't think we'll have any more bother, do you?" I shook my head, but I rattled the old Georgian lock gently, just to make sure. The thing was blessed. Oh my God, it was blessed. Absolutely, with the holy water and the frankincense and the holy water again, probably. There was a gaggle of blue uniforms in the far corner, but it was parting. Someone was being let out. Dorinda was white as a sheet, silent, eyes locked, her eyes looking nowhere, all the signs of deep shock. But at last she was putting one foot in front of the other. "I've radioed for an ambulance," said Sergeant Watkins. The boys followed Dorinda out with that same white, glazed look on their faces. Except Henry, who summoned enough energy for a ghost of a grin and said, "Course, you didn't know I'd fetch him one." I went to hospital with Dorinda in the ambulance. The boys went in the police car. Halfway there, she opened her eyes and knew me. "Joff." "Thanks." But it wasn't the Dorinda Molyneux I'd known. The unshakable confidence had gone. The certainty that there was a practical answer for everything. "I never realized." She closed her eyes and was silent, then continued. "I thought if you were decent and kept the rules, God wouldn't let things like that happen to you." I didn't ask what had happened to her. I just said, "God lets road accidents happen to decent people every day. Why should that kind of thing be so different?" "Yes," she said with the sadness you'd expect from an old woman.
Yes.
She reached out and grabbed my hand and played with the knuckles.
I like you. You're warm.
She went on, holding my hand till we got to the hospital. Mike Watkins joined me in the waiting room with his notebook. I suppose you're after the name and address of the accused, I said with a weak attempt at humor.
Only for my own interest.
Must have been old Anstey, the public auditor. It was the Anstey vault.
Well, not going down again to look. Not for superintendent's wages.
But I don't reckon it was Anstey.
Anstey's memorial was desecrated too, and I've seen a painting of him in old age. A thin, elegant gent, lots of frizzy grey hair.
Well, I saw, and got no hair. I shuddered at the memory. Who do you reckon it was then?
The only memorial that wasn't desecrated was Thomas Dawes.
The honored and painful schoolmaster and benefactor of this parish.
Still publicly rebuking vice.
And discreetly practicing virtue. God, I feel sick. I'd like to blow the paste to smithereens with him in it.
Nasty thing.
Oppressed sex, said Sergeant Watkins.
We were shown a lot of that at Bramshill College. Prefer a pint of beer and a game of darts myself. Don't fret, Joff. He won't get loose again. I'll have a word with the vicar. He'll believe us. Nobody else would.
I took care of Dorinda after that. Eventually, she got so she could walk into a church again, if I held her hand tight. She did that just before we got married, which was the last day of Miss Dorinda Molyneux. See, I knew it. I knew it because in an earlier story, he talks about his wife, and her name is Dorinda. So, like, yeah, Dorinda. But then in this next story, if you haven't seen, I have this one on YouTube right now, the next story. Marriageability. You were right. You were right, Anjem. That's,
Yikes.
The next story, I'm reading this book all kinds of out of order. The next story is on my YouTube channel if you want to go watch that. Let's see. The other stories we have, and I'm going to let you guys pick which one we read next. The Devil and Clocky Watson, that's that name Clocky Watson. The Doll, The Woolworth Spectacles, Portland Bill, and The Ugly House. Any thoughts? Any votes? I am intrigued by Woolworth Spectacles because on the back of the book it says where does it say? A pair of old spectacles that let their wearers see a little too clearly. So, I'm intrigued by that one. What? So, it auto-modded the words devil and ugly. I'm gonna have to fix that shit. Your message is loud. Okay. I have read The Devil and Clocky Watson, and it is... Yeah, I think... And Jim, I think specifically you might be interested in this one to a certain extent. Not because necessarily the subject. A sinister Georgian clock carved with obscene and satanic designs. Now, the thing about the clock, there's penises on it. There's penises on it. So, I think Devil and Clocky Watson, also because his name is fucking Clocky Watson. Like, yeah, okay. And also, I'm using this vintage bookmark. This was my grandmother's. Yes. What? I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Penne pastas. Oh, I'm smart. I pay attention. I am good at observing and words. I am so good at words. I am so good at words. Okay, Devil and Clocky Watson it is. It's in the front of the book, but I'm using the bookmark anyway because it was my grandma's. And it's a cat. It's a cat. He's a cat. I did ask for creative word substitutions, and you fucking delivered, man. You fucking delivered. Penne pastas. Penne pastas. All right, so next time we will talk about penne pastas. I did that first story on Friday, so I might do Friday again. Really depends. It's either going to be Friday or maybe. No, Friday. Friday works. Friday's good. I was supposed to do on Monday, but it did not happen for reasons. So, I will see you all on Friday. You delivered so well, I didn't even catch it. You delivered so well that I didn't even get the email that the package arrived. I didn't get an Amazon notification. I had no idea. I will see you all on Friday, maybe. We'll see. We're going to read that book. And then when we're finished with this book, or before, haven't decided. I'm flippant like that. We're going to start reading some Goosebumps. Because I love Goosebumps. Oh, that's not how the porn goes. The pizza boy's not supposed to leave before the delivery. That's not how the porn goes. That is the... Okay. Actually, I would love to see, like, porn trope parodies where it doesn't turn into porn. It turns into either something super mundane or, like it's got like all the script in it, but it's like pizza delivery boy doesn't get a tip and then he's fired. I don't know. There's something fun. There's something there. I want to see like parodies of porn tropes. That would be cool. Okay. All right. Poor pizza boy. Poor pizza boy. Oh, there's no sausage on my pizza. I like pizza both ways. Sausage or no sausage. I don't. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys on Friday. I love you. Bye. Bye.